Hi everybody, and welcome to today's video, which is going to be my favorite books of 2024. 2024 was a pretty good reading year for me. I think that it's really helped to cement the types of books that I like and what I like about them. I did also come across things that I really didn't enjoy, which is fine. If you read a lot, you're obviously going to come across things that you don't like. But I do think that this year was really good as far as my reading. So I would like to share with you the 10 books that were my absolute favorites this last year. I do have them ranked from number 10 to my absolute favorite book of this year. So we can go ahead and start with number 10, which is A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer. This is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and it follows a girl named Harper, and she lives with her brother and her mother. Her mother is really sick, and her brother are doing everything they can to get money so that they can help her get better, and they turn to some not great ways of getting money. And one day she stumbles across a girl that is being kidnapped by a man, and she steps in to try to save her, and she ends up getting taken by this guy to this magical kingdom where she's presented to Prince Ren, who is the prince of this kingdom, who has been cursed to relive the same year over and over again, and he has to repeat it until he falls in love with someone and that person falls in love with him. And if he only has a certain amount of times to relive this year, and if he doesn't accomplish it by the set amount of years, then he has to give up his kingdom to the enchantress that cursed him. I really enjoyed this retelling, and I talked about this in my priority TBR when I was talking about the sequel. But what I really liked about this book is that it took a fairy tale that is usually like pretty cut and dry and like copy and paste when we get retellings of it, and it made it unique, mainly because of the different character voices, because she is from our modern world and he's in this fantasy kingdom. So you get like the very clashing character voices, and she's really snippy, and she uses like modern language, and he like doesn't understand what she's saying the majority of the time. And so taking those very contrasting voices and contrasting areas of knowledge, it made it a really interesting book to read, not only in the plot and in the retelling aspect, but because of the characters and how they work through these differences. So definitely really enjoyed it, and that's why it made a spot on this list. The 9th book on this list is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This story is the first in the Cruel Prince trilogy, and it follows Jude, who is kidnapped when she's very young, and she gets taken by this fairy warrior. She is taken with her 2 sisters. Her oldest sister is the daughter of the man that takes them, and when he comes to take them, he kills their parents and takes them to stay with him in Fairy. And we follow her years later after this, as she's still like coming to terms with all of this, and she is trying to like fit into this world where the other like kids don't want any part of her because she is human. And she has big dreams of being like a warrior in this world so that she can prove herself to all of these people. And she makes a deal with one of the princes, as it's about time for the king to step down and to name one of his children as the new leader of Fairy. So she strikes a deal with one of the princes to help him. And I absolutely love stories about fairies. Anything that has like that fairy tale-esque feel to it, I really love. And I like how in this story we have like fairies and fae portrayed like more tricksy, like they are in traditional fairy tales. Because in a lot of other stories that have fairies, like A Court of Thorns and Roses and things of that nature, we are told that they're tricksy and that they're like cruel, but we don't see a lot of it. Because in most of those stories we're around like high fae, which are more human like, and more human in like characteristics and emotions. But in this story we have the fairies that are like really not great, like they aren't great people, and they, like, through them despising Jude, we get the sense of them like their cleverness and the hate that they have for humans, and like really the things that fairies are portrayed as in old fairy tales. So I really loved this one. I loved the like relationship that Jude has with her sisters and the clash that we see there through her oldest sister like wanting different things than she does and not understanding why she would want them. And I think it's very accurate. All of the relationships between the people were like really accurate. There were a lot of twists and just a lot of fun stuff that I really enjoyed and made this a really immersive read. Number 8 is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is the first book in the Fourth Wing series, and it follows Violet Sorrengail, and her mother is the general in this kingdom, and all of the kids have to, well, they don't have to, but a lot of them end up going to this academy where you learn to be dragon riders, and you get the opportunity to bond with a dragon if a dragon chooses you. And Violet doesn't really, she wants to go to the scribe quadrant and help in like the research aspect and deal with like the scrolls and things like that, but her mother signs her up to go to the writer's quadrant where she will have to become a warrior, and she doesn't believe that she can do it. She has an illness that allows her, or that prohibits her from doing a lot of the things that you have to be able to do to survive in the writer's quadrant. So she ends up having to go and like find her place here among these people that look down on her because of her illness, and bully her and try to get rid of her because like you can actually die in the writer's quadrant. Like there's nothing stopping anyone from taking you out or from you just succumbing to the various like activities and obstacle courses and things like that. And this is a romance, a fantasy romance, and it follows her as she is also like having to deal with romantic relationships that are coming up, and she is told specifically to stay away from this one boy that's in there, and obviously that's the person that she ends up falling for. It's really a wild story, actually. There's a lot of things that are going on. The only reason that this isn't higher is we are in a pretty isolated setting of the academy, and we don't really get out of that setting much. So I found it a little isolated, and I didn't really know what was happening in the world overall. Based off of where this book ended, though, I do believe that the next book will get more of the rest of the world and like what's happening, like what the relationship between the different countries are, and like really outside of the academy, like what's actually happening. So I'm so excited to get to the sequel, but this book really is like one of the best fantasy romances that I've read in a while, which is why it made it on this list. The seventh book is The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson. This is the third book in the Truly Devious series. This book was spectacular. It's a YA thriller slash mystery that follows Stevie Bell, who gets invited to go to Ellingham Academy. And Ellingham Academy is like infamous for a series of kidnappings and possibly murders that happened there years ago. And she absolutely loves crime and things like that. So she knows everything there is to know about the case, and she wants to solve it. So when she gets invited to go to Ellingham Academy, she jumps at the idea. She goes and she starts trying to do research and figure out like what really happened years ago when all of these things were happening. And we get a resurgence of possibly some more crimes, and mysterious things start to happen. So that's what happened in the first book, and it really just goes on from there, her like really trying to figure out what's happening. And in this third book, we finally get answers as to what happened all those years ago. And I absolutely love mysteries where I love the part where things come together, and this whole book was pretty much that. We get like a whole bunch of answers all at once. It's phenomenal. And there's one part where like all the characters are snowed in, and it has this like really eerie and isolated setting as like all these forces are at work and we don't really know what's going on, and all of the characters are scared, and it's just so atmospheric and amazing. Thrillers and mysteries aren't really something that I normally read, so the fact that one made it onto this list is spectacular and really a testament to how good this book is. Book 6 is Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune. This was one of the first books I read last year, and I immediately fell in love with this. It follows a man who's like, he's not the head of this company, but he's like high up in the company. And he's not a great person. His employees don't like him. He's unfair. He's rude. He's mean. Like all the bad things. Everything that you don't want in a boss. And he dies. And he gets taken to this place in like the afterlife. But he gets taken to this house, and it's the house of, I don't remember what they're called, but it's like a caretaker where they, the ghosts come and visit, and they stay for as long as they need until the caretaker can help them pass over, all the way to where they are no longer a ghost. And so we follow this man as he goes and like sorts through all of his emotions, where he like learns to be a better person after his death, and where he like starts to feel remorse for all the things that he did, and learns like empathy and all of the like good human emotions that he really lacked during his life. And as he comes into contact with other ghosts that are coming to this place and gets to like hear about other people's lives, and it's really a story about human emotion and the things that we do during life and what kind of legacy we're leaving behind, what people will remember us for. And it's really just an absolutely beautiful story, touching on grief, not only like as he's losing, like having to succumb to the fact that he died. There's grief in that, obviously, that is working through, but also various other people that he meets while he's a ghost, and having to deal with them passing over, and the relationships that he makes with the caretaker and the other people in this place. And it's just a beautiful story full of so many nuggets of truth and inspiration. And it was really just a joy to read, and one that I just know that I'll be thinking about forever, and one that I will probably reread many, many times. Number 5 is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This book was spectacular. I'm starting to realize that, like anything that V. Schwab writes, I'm gonna love it. This follows Kell, who lives in this world where there are mirroring Londons. So there's Red London, which is where Kell's from. Grey London, which is a London that is without magic. White London, where magic is viewed as something that you have to have in order to have like political power, pretty much, and people like will fight for magic, and it's like a really brutal place. And then there's Black London, which is like completely desolate, and no one goes there because of something that happened years ago. And all the Londons were closed off to each other after this catastrophe that happened with Black London, and there were just a few people that can go in, that can like travel between the Londons, and Kell is one of those. And he gets this artifact that he has to figure out what to do with. It needs to go back to Black London before like things really start to happen, and he has to figure out what to do with it, because like he's not allowed to go to Black London. He's not supposed to take things in between Londons, so he's really in a difficult position. We also follow Delilah Bard, who is a thief from Grey London, and she just wants adventure. She wants out. She dreams of being a pirate. Like she doesn't want to be confined to this place. And when she stumbles upon Kell, they get entangled up and end up going on this like adventure to figure out what to do with this artifact, how they're going to get it to Black London. And I really like this book, and it was mainly because of the characters. Delilah Bard I found her really annoying in the first like half of the book, and then she just suddenly grew on me, and her, like, I understood why she was the way that it was, and it made perfect sense. So seeing like her interactions with Kell, and how they were like in the same situation, but they viewed it so wildly differently because of what she wanted, and how it was very different from what he wanted. And I'm so excited to continue this series. I don't really know where it's going to go from where this book ended. Like, I really have no clue, but I'm so excited to finish off this trilogy. It's just so good. How the plot is so intricate, and there's all kinds of things happening. It's really just so much fun, and I'm really excited to get to the second book. Number 4 is The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw by Sarah Cannon. This book follows Lorelai, who is best friends with Vanessa Shaw before her disappearance 1 year ago. And it was under interesting circumstances. So Lorelai and Vanessa and a group of their friends were at Vanessa's cabin in the woods. And they end up getting into a fight, and Vanessa storms out into the woods, and Lorelai follows her, and Vanessa manages to get away, and she disappears, and no one knows what happened to her. And we follow Lorelai a year later as her friends, everyone that was at the cabin that night, come back to the cabin exactly a year later to in remembrance of Vanessa Shaw. They don't know if she's dead. No one knows what happened to her. They never found her body. So they're going to remember her, and slowly things start to fall away as we get more about the characters and realize that everyone had a reason to want Vanessa gone. And Lorelai ends up looking for an answer as to what happened to her. and starting to dig into everyone's past, until she is able to figure out who did it. And it is so wild. So it follows like a dual timeline. We get perspectives, or we get chapters from the perspectives of all the characters. Some of them are in present time, and some are a year ago, leading up to Vanessa's disappearance. And in each chapter, there's always something that we find out that pertains to her disappearance in some way, or their relationship with Vanessa. And it's just so wild to see, like, slowly all the layers fall away and realize that, like, everyone isn't who you think they are at the beginning of the book, and everyone has a motivation. And it was just so wild. We got to the end of every chapter, and I just wanted to keep going because there was always a new reveal about something that pertained to the disappearance, and it was just so much fun. It was just a wild ride with possibly like paranormal stuff. No one really knows, like no one knows what's going on. It was so good though. Such a page turner. I ended up like staying up way too late, like every night, reading like 100 pages or so. Like, it was so good, and a book that I genuinely could not put down as I was reading it, which really is like such a good quality for a book, which is why it made it so high on this list. So now we're into my top 3. Number 3 on this list is Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb. This is the 3rd book in the Tawny Man trilogy, which is the 3rd series in Robin Hobb's extended universe. So I can't really talk about Fool's Fate specifically. But this the extended universe starts with the Assassin's Apprentice, which follows Fitz, who is a young boy, and he is the bastard son of a prince. And when his dad, his dad pretty much sends him to live with his grandfather, the king, when he's really young. I think he's like 5 or something when he gets sent to live with his grandfather. And because he's a bastard, but he's also a prince, he gets trained as the royal assassin because he's part of the royal family. He can go to all of the royal events, and people know him, but he's not so important that he can't slip into the shadows if he needs to find information or to take someone out. So he's trained as the assassin, and the story follows him as he grows up and has to navigate like the politics of the court as a young boy, and all of these responsibilities that he doesn't really want, but he doesn't have a choice in taking. And this series, like the whole extended universe, it's spectacular. It is full of like gut-wrenching scenes, and Robin Hobb is not afraid to hurt characters and to destroy relationships with characters. There is just so much that happened in the series, and it's really an emotional roller coaster. The books are actually pretty slow. They're like, most of them are over 500 pages. So there's actually not a lot that happens. There's a lot of character thoughts and like very broad brush strokes of things happening. But the real appeal of the series is the emotions and the relationships between the characters, and like what the characters are learning about themselves and other people and the world. And it's just so much fun. And the Tawny Man trilogy was definitely, I think I like it better than the first trilogy, which is why Fool's Fate is on this list. It was just such a perfect conclusion to the series, and like absolutely heart-wrenching, the ending of that book. And a lot of the things that happened in that book like weren't things that I wanted to happen, because I care for the characters, and like the books hardly ever end on a happy ending. So it was absolutely heart-wrenching, but it was spectacular. By the end of it, I felt so much for these characters, and I felt so connected to them, which is ultimately why this is my third favorite book of 2024. My second favorite book of 2024 is Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This is, I believe, the fifth book in the Throne of Glass series. I believe this was actually the first book I read last year. And it was so good. It was my favorite book in the Throne of Glass series. Throne of Glass follows Selena Sardarthian, and she, at the start of the first book, she is in this slave camp because of things that happened years ago. So she ended up at the slave camp. And when the story starts, the prince of the kingdom comes to take her away because she is going to be a part of a set of games where a whole bunch of assassins and mercenaries and like capable murderers pretty much are going to fight, and the last one standing is going to be the king's champion to go on this quest. And so she's taken out of the slave camp, and she goes to fight in this trial. And the series, like, that is so small compared to like what the whole series is about. But the first book was one, I think I read it in like one night. It was so good. And how the series progressed, by the time we get to Empire of Storms, like, the plot is so much larger than the first book, and there's so many things happening. But what I will say, the reason that I enjoyed this one so much, is this book had one of my favorite things in fantasy books, which is assemble the team. Those are like my favorite moments in fantasy books, where a character ends up like calling on a whole bunch of people, and then they all like assemble. And that I believe the book ended with that, and it was so good. Like, it was so satisfying. It was exactly what I wanted, and it was just amazing. And by now, like, I know when I read Sarah J. Maas, like, it's going to be high up in my favorites. Like, I love everything she writes. I love her characters. I love the plots. I love everything about it. So this was like no surprise to me. The only surprise was that I liked this one more than the final book in the series, because I normally end up liking final books more. Not in this case. But Empire Storms was just spectacular, and like just exactly what I wanted the book to be, as far as like where the characters were and certain specific plot things that happened. Like, it was just exactly what I wanted to read at that moment, which attributed it to being my second favorite book of 2024. Okay, my favorite book of 2020 by far has to go to House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. So Sarah J. Maas took the second and the first favorite book of 2024. And I definitely think that is as it should be. So House of Earth and Blood follows Bryce Quinlan. And she has a best friend who ends up getting murdered under mysterious circumstances. They don't actually know if it's a murder. Bryce assumes that it is, but she doesn't really understand like who or why. And so we follow her, I believe, a year later. It's sometime after. And things start to resurface about Danica's death. And so the Archangel of the city tasks her to like look into what's happening, and try to like figure out what happened to Danica. And he assigns her a bodyguard, whose name is Hunt Athalar, and they really don't like each other, but they have to work together to figure out what happened to Danica. And I absolutely like adored this book. It was so different than anything else from Sarah J. Maas, and I know exactly why that is. In Throne of Glass and A Court of Thorns and Roses, the setting is very like traditional fantasy. There's no technology, people don't use modern language. But in the Crescent City series, there are skyscrapers and people have cell phones and they use modern language and modern slang. But in this fantasy world, and there are all kinds of different creatures. There are vampires and werewolves and shapeshifters and like all kinds of things. And that mix of modern technology and modern language and modern society mixed with the magic and the wonder of the world. It was really spectacular. I loved the characters, everything about them. We get Danica dies in the first couple chapters, and just from the few chapters of her, like, I was absolutely devastated at her death. Like, in only a few chapters, I was like so connected to her as a character already, and I felt so much for Bryce as she was going through that. And as we get more about Hunt and his backstory, like, I felt so much for all of the characters and the things that they were going through and having to traverse these relationships with each other and the other people that they had to get answers from. Like, it was such a great mix of like a perfect plotted story with perfectly paced chapters and amazing characters and character growth and like such connective and such real feeling characters. I could gush about this book forever, but it definitely deserves its spot as number 1 on this list. So those were my top 10 favorite books of 2024. Like I said, 2024 was definitely a really good reading year. I read a lot of really good books. Not a lot of 5 stars, but definitely a lot of 4 stars. A pretty high average rating for the year. But I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and let me know in the comments what y'all's favorite books were of 2024. And with that, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.